Mr. Chairman, I just want to go back in that shallow well issue and clarify.
Yeah, please.
Our understanding there's no exception for shallow wells written into the rule, but we've been told by field staff that they would have to give exception to shallow wells. Is that your understanding?
I am not read into this specific issue, so if I could follow up with you after the hearing.
That's what we've been hearing back in Montana, and the point is about half of the 800 wells in Montana are shallow wells.
Are these coal bed methane wells? Is that what you're talking about?
We call them shallow legacy wells,
Okay.
and they would likely receive an exemption, but we'd have to make that application for it. And so it just, again, looks like, as Senator Lee mentioned, it's a solution in search of a problem right now. I want to turn to Ms. Skama. When the BLM rule, it says it will actually facilitate oil and gas development. Do you believe it will speed up, facilitate development of federal lands?
Well, adding more federal regulation and red tape, rarely it does speed things up. You know, I think BLM has minimized the implementation of this rule. I think they've minimized both the cost and the effort. There's an entirely new decision point that is in this rule that requires engineering staff at BLM to make determinations on things. And if there are certain readings, certain pressure testing readings, and probably Mr. Watson can explain that better, but there are things that BLM has to be notified of and may require an operator to wait until an answer comes back from BLM. And there's nothing in the rule that requires BLM to respond in a certain amount of time. So we just don't see how this rule can be easily implemented. It's not, 4 hours of staff time when you've got additional engineering information that has to be gone through, decision points on whether the hydraulic fracturing process can go forward. And then, of course, on industry time, on industry side, this is not a simple rule to enforce. It's not just a matter of, oh, we're already doing it anyway. An operator could be already voluntarily doing most of the things in this rule, but the additional paperwork requirements and the additional information that must be supplied will just by necessity take additional staff time.
So, and continue on that line of thinking, the administration has proposed to increase royalty fees and other fees for oil and gas on federal lands. Will increasing royalty fees on federal lands, in your opinion, facilitate or deter oil and gas development?
Well, it will continue the exodus off of federal lands and onto adjacent private and state lands, or in the case, what happens a lot is producers move from states in the West predominated by federal lands like Montana and Wyoming and other areas of the country where they don't have that additional red tape. The Interior Department has chosen to take more resources from industry in the form of additional regulation. And, it takes years longer, not just at the permitting stage, but at every stage, from leasing to environmental analysis to the permitting stage, to get a project approved and completed.
So if the exploration moves completely off of federal lands, what's that mean to the taxpayer?
The taxpayer will get much less revenue return. And we've seen revenue onshore go down over the last several years.
Director Corns, I want to go back to the discussion about tribes, and I appreciate the outreach you've had to tribes. Back in Montana, we believe that our tribes should have the freedom to develop their own natural resources if they choose, especially due to the high unemployment rates that we see, oftentimes in excess of 50%, and the need for essential services in their communities. Yet it's my understanding that some tribes have expressed concerns about the BLM's proposed rule. Director, can you expand on the tribal consultation process the BLM underwent with Indian tribes on this final rule?
We have been consulting with tribes throughout the process. We had a very significant collaboration and consultation process during the drafting and during the comment periods and around that. And so that was, part of my visit to the three affiliated tribes was we were holding a regional tribal conversation where many tribes from Montana attended.
With all of that input that you received, how many changes of the final rule occurred to accommodate the tribe's concerns?
I'm sorry, I missed.
With all the input you received from the tribes, how many changes occurred to the final rule to accommodate their concerns?
I Couldn't give you a strict number, but I can tell you that tribal input did have an imprint on this bill, and you can see it in what we developed.
Just maybe as a follow-up, it'd be helpful just to get the specific changes made to the rule as a result of the input the tribes gave to this process.
We should be able to provide that to you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.